Hi, I'm Shelia Arnett. Thank you for taking some time to learn more about Jaclyn's Hope. Jaclyn's Hope is named in honor of Jaclyn Hostetter of Lexington, Virginia. Jaclyn was always giving back to her community. Food drives, toy drives, benefit softball tournaments, elder care, healthcare advocacy, anything that would benefit her patients or her community, Jaclyn was involved. Jaclyn worked for American Retirement Homes for 13 years. They have a home health care side as well as an assisted living side. She started out on the home health care side as a patient care assistant, then became the agency director of the Lexington Home Health Care Office. She was promoted to Valley Director. She was still the director of the Lexington office, but then also traveled to other agencies around the state. In May of 2021, she became Virginia's newest LALA, a licensed assisted living administrator, and became the administrator of the Mayflower. Making the life of her patients and the residents at the Mayflower better was her passion. Whenever a resident at the Mayflower turned 100, she would put the call out and ask everyone to mail them birthday cards. She would set up a little mini parade for them. All the residents would go sit out on the front porch of the Mayflower on Main Street and watch the parade of fire trucks and police cars driving slowly by, sirens blaring, celebrating the 100th birthday of that resident. For several years, she went to George Washington University in DC to the George Hacks competition. The students would compete in ways to make healthcare better. She participated in the robotics team at Virginia Tech as they worked on robotic wheelchairs for permanently disabled adults. In June of 2016, a flash flood happened in a small community in West Virginia. Jaclyn put the call out and asked for non-perishable food, for water, for Gatorade, for cleaning supplies. They loaded up the Mayflower bus and Jaclyn's car and took the supplies to West Virginia. Her oldest daughter and her pulled on a pair of mud boots and went to an elderly woman's home and cleaned her home for her. Jaclyn often took her children when she was doing service projects. She was teaching them to talk the talk, but also how to walk the walk of giving back. In April of 2020, Jaclyn deployed as part of the Medical Reserve Corps Emergency Response Team to a nursing home in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Several of the patients had died from COVID. Several of the other patients were tested positive, and most of the staff was positive for COVID and having to quarantine at home. So Jaclyn, with her hazmat suit and her N95 mask, spent 72 hours inside that facility taking care of those patients. I talked to her right before she went into the facility. She said, that's what you do when you're in healthcare. When you are able, you give back. In April of 2017, a healthcare worker that worked for Jaclyn was murdered. She was murdered by her husband. December of that same year, a second healthcare worker that worked for Jaclyn was also murdered by her intimate partner. Domestic Violence Advocacy became a passion of hers. She started using the hashtag Love Shouldn't Hurt. In October of 2018, Jaclyn hosted a Walk a Mile in Her Shoes walk in Lexington. She asked that the men wear a pair of high-heeled shoes, and many of them did, including the CEO of the Carillion Healthcare Systems, who came down from Roanoke, walked a mile in a pair of high-heeled shoes just because Jaclyn asked him to. April of 2019, a third healthcare worker that lived in Rockbridge County was murdered by her intimate partner. Jaclyn continued to raise awareness for domestic violence. November 2nd, 2021, Jaclyn began the fight of her life when she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Even battling cancer, she still gave back to her community. She picked up toys for the annual toy drive from different agencies and delivered them. She and her kids still took donuts and cookies to the firefighters and the law enforcement officers over the holidays, like she did every year before, because they were having to work and miss time with their families. She helped set up a food pantry in a local elementary school. On December 10th, 2021, tragedy struck the small community again. A fourth healthcare worker was murdered by the person that was supposed to love her the most. 4 healthcare workers in 4 years, All of them Jaclyn knew personally. Jaclyn contacted WDBJ Channel 7 reporter Bruce Young. She wanted to do a segment on domestic violence against those in healthcare. Jaclyn, or Jackie as many called her, wanted the segment to air on Valentine's Day. She felt it would be a good reminder that love should not hurt. Jaclyn felt that the nurturing nature of healthcare workers made them particularly vulnerable. Maybe it's because they were trained to take care of others no matter what. On January 28th, Jaclyn's family and her close friends gathered around her hospital bed. I held her hand as she took her last small breath just before 3 a.m. in the same hospital where I had given birth to her 38 years before. Jaclyn is my oldest daughter. Her entire community mourned her death. 7 weeks after her death, a group of volunteers in Lexington started Jaclyn's Hope. Part of their mission is to promote conditions that prevent and eliminate domestic violence among healthcare workers through education and community partners, providing informational resources and advocating as a strong, unified voice for victims of domestic violence. I started looking at domestic violence courses for healthcare workers. All healthcare workers need a certain number of CEUs, continuing education units, to renew their license every 2 years. I found a handful of companies around the country that do domestic violence courses that healthcare workers can receive those CEUs from. A disturbing fact I learned, though, was that most states do not require a domestic violence course for healthcare workers. There are only 3 states that require it: Florida, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Because I live in Florida, I know several elected officials here. So I started looking at the Florida statute first. I wanted to maybe use the Florida statute as a template for other states to follow. The Florida statute is over 20 years old and only requires healthcare workers to take a domestic violence course every 3rd time they renew their license, or once every 6 years. I need your help. We need to make the Florida statute stronger and start petitioning other states to pass similar statutes. Healthcare workers touch so many lives: their patients, the families of the patient, their own friends and family, their co-workers. Maybe the healthcare worker taking the domestic violence course will find the courage to leave their abuser or to ask for help. I have spoken to my local delegation, my congresswoman, my Florida senators and representatives about Jaclyn's Hope. I've also spoken to someone in the congressman's office that represents Rockbridge County. Please pass this video along to your delegations on the state and the Florida level. Jaclyn wanted to leave a legacy for the community she loved, to end domestic violence among healthcare workers in Rockbridge County. Of course, healthcare workers are not the only ones that suffer domestic violence, but it's a start. As her mom, I will do everything in my power to make that happen there in Virginia and around the country. Thank you for your time today. I'm Shelia Arnett. You can reach me at 352-390-8324. Thank you.